Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of our podcast, the Friday Fables podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jags, and joining me is my co host, Kira.
Hello, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. So, we're just going to start off today's episode by doing some quick introductions. So, myself, I am Jags. The consoles and systems I primarily play I have a PlayStation 5, which is usually my main kind of gaming machine thing. But I also have a gaming PC and a Nintendo Switch. Those are my current gen systems. I am playing the Switch currently as my console. And my favorite genre is kind of changes from time to time, but it's usually within the realm of RPGs. Uh, Sort of recently in the past kind of half year, I would say it's JRPGs particularly. But kind of any RPG, anything that lets you kind of roleplay as a character in some kind of ideally fantasy world, I'm usually there for that. And what about you, Kira?
For me, the consoles and systems that I own is a little more complicated. I have everything dating back to the old NES. I have like top loading NES and stuff. I've never gotten rid of any of my consoles, so I own everything. The only thing I don't have that I used to have was the Xbox 360 because it gave me the red ring of death, which is kind of crap. So I don't have that one anymore, but I still have everything else. Now, as to what I primarily play stuff on, that's gonna be the PC for one. I play a lot of PC stuff. The PlayStation 5 and the Switch. Right now, currently, I'm actually playing on the PC a little more, but I'm also using the Switch a lot. My favorite genres, though, I play anything. I'm not a big fan of PvP, but I do play just about anything. My favorite genres are going to be JRPGs. That's always going to be like my all-time favorite. I also like some of the strategy tactics type games or the simulation games, but JRPGs have always been my favorite. It's kind of my thing. I love JRPGs.
Nice, yeah, that's a good point you bring up as well with the PvP. I'd say I'm the same page as you, though. I'm not a huge PvP fan.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's just kind of. I mean, some fighting games, I don't know, they can be kind of fun, and I think like some Overwatch style games. I don't think you had very much fun with that, though, did you?
Yeah, I get very stressed out in PvP.
Yeah.
That's my issue with PvP is I stress myself out and then I end up like not doing well because I'm so focused on, oh my gosh, it's PvP. And so yeah, Overwatch, League of Legends, I like the games. They look nice. I wish I could get into them, but I get a little overwhelmed. I just stress myself out too much. So yeah, but I do try on occasion to play both of them, but I just yeah, not my favorite genre because I do so poorly.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No, they are definitely very stressful. I agree as well. And yeah, strategy RPGs is definitely your department. I
yeah,
suck at
I like
those.
both.
Cool. So that's kind of our introduction. We wanted to we thought it'd be interesting to just kind of like the first episode. We will be coming back to this kind of thing for the future because it's fun to reminisce on the past. But we wanted to kind of talk about uh, our first gaming experience, kind of not necessarily what got us into gaming, because I think that would kind of warrant a bit of a longer segment, but just like what do we remember as our first gaming experience? So I'll go first. Mine is super not interesting to, I'm sure, most people, unless you're a parent. But it was the educational games on PC. It was like a Windows 98. Um, I honestly don't remember what it was called. It was like, I think if anyone's ever heard of the Jump Ahead series of educational games where you had like this cartoon frog as the mascot, and I think he had an insect as his like buddy thing, and it was just
That
a
sounds
bunch of
cute.
those. Yeah, it was. I mean, I didn't think so, but looking back, yeah, I guess it was. Um, But yeah, it was just like a bunch of those like maths, English, and science educational games with where you would kind of go through these levels, I guess, loosely, just solving problems, like math
Mm.
problems and stuff. It was not the best, but at the time, it was what we had. And I also remember on our Windows 98 machine, we had this like encyclopedia. I don't know if you remember those, Kira, but like we had
Mm.
it was just basically an interactive encyclopedia. So we would have a bunch of terms, and you'd click on a term or a word, sorry, and they'll come up with like a video clip or something about that term. It was again very, very old school stuff. But yeah, not a very interesting introduction to games. But again, it was uh, when I was younger, we didn't really have like consoles. We weren't really allowed them. But my
Mm.
parents were okay with having a computer, mainly for like research for school, and then to go along with that were those fun educational games. But yeah, what about you, Kira? I think yours is a lot more interesting than mine.
So my first gaming experience. Well, again, that's one that I know my first gaming experience was on this really old, this is gonna date me, but keep in mind this was old even when I was playing it. Um, this old Coleco Atom, and it had like this
Wow.
attachment on it. Yeah, wow. It had this attachment that you could plug into it, and you could play Atari games on this Atom. So I didn't have the Atari as a kid, which, like I said, this was all old even when I was using it. This was not new. Um, but I remember playing like Pitfall, and I played that awful ET game. Like I played a bunch of
Oh
stuff on this
God,
thing.
you played E.T.?
Yeah, I did on that. But um my first actual gaming experience that like I really remember, because I remember doing those, but like they were so, oh, it's so fuzzy. It's like I remember this was a thing and I remember doing it, but like I don't remember details of any of it. The first thing that I actually remember doing was also more of the educational type stuff. We had, it was at a Apple IIe at school that had Oregon Trail on it.
Oh wow, yeah.
And we played Oregon Trail, like the first Oregon Trail. It was, oh, very, very interesting looking. The graphics on these were not great. And yes, like you would sit there and next to your friends and stuff, and you'd all name like your whole Oregon Trail party were all your friends that were sitting around you in the classroom. And you kind of would like be telling your friends, "Oh, you just died of dysentery, huh? You fell off the raft. You died and drowned." It's all this stuff. You'd sit there and kind of tease your friends about who didn't survive the trip, which usually was most of your party. But we also had an old Packard Bell computer at home that had Windows 3.1 on it. I played on that a lot. And then the NES was another one that was really early. So those are so long ago. Which one was the first? Probably the Atom, and then the others followed shortly. But all of those memories are kind of clumped together because they were all at about the same time ish. So
Yeah,
yeah, one of those. I do remember Oregon Trail a lot though.
I've never played
Oh
that game, and to be honest, I hadn't heard of the Atom either until you mentioned it. That's pretty cool. So
yeah.
what? So how did it work? You could play Atari games on it.
Yes, it was like a computer, like it had a keyboard and stuff, and I remember this thing, it would run off of tapes, like actual
Like cassette tapes.
tapes. Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Um, well, no, because like anytime my sister was trying to save something or run something, these things would use audio. It would read the audio from these cassettes. And I remember as this little kid, I was playing dress up and I was like wearing either my sister or my mom's. I was dressing up in their closet, and I came in there with these high heels on that were way too big for my feet. So of course, when I go walking on this tile floor, you hear
Oh
this clank
no.
clink as I go, walking
Yeah.
across there. And whatever it was, my sister had just spent like an hour and a half trying to do on this thing. She had to start all over because it now needed to reread those tapes because it was picking up the audio. It failed. It'll bring up this big failed message, and you had to just start over. And
No.
she got so mad at me. She's like, "What are you
Yeah.
doing?" I was like, "I'm sorry. I didn't know you were." So yeah, they were neat, but they were not at all practical. But it was a PC-ish. It had the keyboard and the monitor, but it had like this add-on thing that you could plug in and it could play Atari games. Which was kind of cool because I remember talking to her about it one day. I was like, "Oh yeah, well we must have had an Atari because I remember playing these games." And she's like, "No, we never had an Atari. We had that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Because I just didn't understand how it was that I remember playing all these Atari games,
Yeah.
but we didn't have an Atari, and it's like, am I crazy? No, it's we had I think it was a Coleco Atom, is what it was called. So yeah, it was
That's
fun, but it was a pain.
yeah. That reminds me, do you know what Coleco stands for?
No, I
I
don't.
found this out a few years ago. It's hilarious. It's not what you think it stands for. Are you ready?
What's it stand for? Yeah.
I think it's Connecticut Leather Company. So
What?
like before making games, I think they were like, I don't know, I guess like a leather company thing. They make like leather products or something like that.
Oh, that's
So
funny.
it
Yeah.
abbreviates to Coleco. I thought that was pretty cool.
Coleco.
Well, interesting
Uh,
more than cool, I'd say. But
Interesting. Yeah. Kind of like Nintendo with their playing cards before they went
yeah,
into
yeah,
the game.
exactly.
But, oh, video games, I guess. Playing cards are games. But
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about some of the games that we're currently playing. So myself right now, I just got done playing Persona 4 Golden on PC. I think last week, and I jumped pretty much straight into Persona 5. Um, so that's Persona 5 Royal on Switch. So that's currently what I'm playing. Kind of alongside that, I am playing Persona 2 Innocent Sin on PSP, and kind of started, but basically put down Persona 3 Reload. I'm kind of go back to that after finishing Persona 5 Royal. And Persona 2 Innocent Sin is an interesting one because over here in the UK, so basically Europe, Persona 2 was not released on PS1. So for all intents and purposes, Persona 2 for us is just a PSP game, even though it is actually a port of a PS1 game from Japan. That game is interesting because there's actually two parts of it. So there's Persona 2 Innocent Sin, and then I think the sequel is called Eternal Punishment. That one still has yet to be released in Europe, but as far as I'm aware, you don't have to play it. It just gives you like some. It extends the story, but the story, to my understanding from Innocent Sin, is kind of it ends basically is what I'm trying to say. Like so, it finishes. It's not left on a cliffhanger, to my knowledge. Again, I don't know if that's actually true. Else, I suppose we'll find that out when we actually beat the game. But
Mhm.
that's pretty much what I'm playing. I did Final Fantasy 14 Dawn Trail dropped this month, so kind of went through and played through that and just finished the story, the main story quest, main scenario quest, sorry, the MSQ, and haven't really gone back to it then since then very much, other than just do like sub dungeons for the new tomestones of aesthetics for some of the end game gear. Other than that, so after this, like I said, gonna beat Persona 5 Royal, hopefully, and then. But I am taking my time with that. I'm enjoying the game quite a bit, so I'd like to take my time. So I'm on a bit of a Persona Atlas fixed at the moment. So after I finish that, I'll go on to we'll revisit Persona 3 Reload and hopefully finish that because that was actually the first Persona games that I ever played. Like years ago, I played Persona 3 FES on PS2. And that was actually the game that introduced me and got me into JRPGs. So I'd like to revisit that after this. So that's me and what I'm currently playing. What about you, Kira? What's on your
I
screen?
I was actually just thinking it is very interesting how we'll get games over here in the US that have obviously been translated into
Yeah.
English, like, they're over here, but for some reason, they never make it over to Europe. Like, you guys won't like, "Oh, yeah, that was never released here," and it's like, "But why?"
Atlas
It's like,
games
"We
are really
got it."
bad. Yeah, Atlas
It
games are really bad about that. They just so many of their games just don't get published in Europe.
yeah,
Sorry.
I just feel like it's one of those that it's already I feel like the bulk of the work has already been done. It's already been translated to English. It's already everything's been updated, the menus, the voice, all of that's already been done. It's just I don't know, what is it, the NTSC to PAL? It's I don't know.
Yeah.
It's so weird to me that we'll get it and then like you guys don't.
I've heard
Right
publishing
there.
is really tough. Like it's something that is
Yeah.
very difficult. Um, I have a funny story. I remember like when Atlas released SMT for, I think it was for Apocalypse on 3DS in Europe.
Mhm.
They released it in such a small, uh, it had such a small print run that it pretty much immediately sold out. And I sent like a very strongly worded email, so strongly worded email to Atlas telling them like you should do a better job with that. Of course, they didn't respond, but yeah, I read on. That's what made me want to look online and be like, why is this always a problem with their games when they actually do come out? It's like such limited quantities that you can't even get your hands on it. But yeah, apparently it's
Yeah.
just very difficult, I guess.
It's a rough market.
Yeah.
Um
Sorry. Yeah.
So for me, I have been doing a Chrono Trigger Let's Play. So that one, I've been finally playing Chrono Trigger. That's one that's been on my list for ages. So that one is an old one. It is on the Super Nintendo. I've also jumped into Final Fantasy 14 with Dawn Trail. I had a bit of catching up to do there with the very end part of Endwalker. Needed to finish that and then blew through the Dawn Trail MSQ pretty quick. Probably about a week ish, maybe if even,
Yeah.
because you got the early access. If you had pre-ordered it, you were able to get early access. So by the time the game actually released, pretty much done with the the main story. I was like, oh, um, I was surprised at that because I was just enjoying it a lot, and then it just flew by, and it's like, oh, what happened? So this is the first time I've ever been caught up on the MSQ, and it feels weird because I'm so used to having like three more expansions to work my way through,
Yeah.
and it's like, well, now I don't. I'm kind of sad, but it was good. I like Final Fantasy 14. I've actually recently picked up 7 Days to Die. I've been playing that just a little bit because it finally released. Like, yes, this game was in like beta for what, 10 years or something. It or maybe that was alpha. I think it was in
I think
alpha
it
for
was an
10
alpha.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it had a very short beta period, and then now it's. I think they actually did finally release 1.0. So I was playing it because I was curious how different it is today back to when I first picked it up ages ago, and it is different. Like they have changed quite a bit. So I've been playing that a little. I also played Coral Island because they've had some updates. So I was picking around on Coral Island a bit, and yeah, I think that's about it for me. And mostly those
Yeah.
current.
Yeah. That's a pretty good list. Do you have anything that you're like kind of on the horizon after you? Well, I suppose you're not really playing that many games that you can just kind of finish. Like I'm assuming 7 Days to Die is kind of whenever you just get sick of the
Yeah,
blood moons and stuff.
there's not an end for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am looking forward to diving a little bit into maybe the Grandia series because I haven't
Oh,
played that
nice.
one.
Yeah.
So that one or the Disgaea series, however you say that one. But those actually have real ends to them, so that'll be good. Um, but yeah, anything you have
That's a good point. I was wanting to get into the Disgaea series myself. I honestly don't know how you say the title either. But yeah. Um, oh, and also just quickly to mention, Kira brought up and myself Final Fantasy 14. We will probably have an episode dedicated to what we think of the MMO, our thoughts and you know, memories playing the game and experiences, all of that kind of stuff. Because that's like quite a large topic, because it's a big game. We're probably going to save that for kind of its own episode. What do you think? I
Mm.
think that sounds like a good
Yeah,
idea.
yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be good.
Yeah, so if anyone listening is thinking like, "Hey, you did tell us about, Dawn Trail and whatever," it's just because of that we want to kind of hold off on it a little bit, and also because Dawn Trail itself is still, I mean, it's quite new. It did only just come out this month, so we don't
Mm.
want to talk too much about it for in case there's a lot of people, because I know there's a lot of people who are trying the game for the first time or returning to it after a while, not caught up yet, so we don't really want to go into too much depth talking about kind of like the story and the dungeons and all that stuff. Not to spoil it for anyone who's yet to see that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, awesome.
More to come.
Sorry.
I said more to come.
Yes, more to come. Exactly. Cool. So I think it's a good time to move into our kind of main segment for this episode. And so we have a pretty interesting question that we're going to try and give our thoughts on. Um, and this is a question that Kira came up with, and it's a really, really good question, I thought. It is, what feature do you wish was in every RPG? So not necessarily just a JRPG, just RPGs as a whole. What is a feature that you may have experienced in a game or many games that, you know, maybe has continued in that series but hasn't really made it outside of that series, or you haven't, it's just an underrated feature that you wish was present in more games. So I'll start off with this one as well. It's a pretty good question, and it's there's a lot of things I think with it, but one of the things that comes to mind for me is so as you may have guessed from like the games I'm currently playing, I'm a big fan of Atlas games. One of the things that I like, I'm a big fan of the Shin Megami Tensei series, and things that I really like about that series is the fact that you kind of play as a protagonist that is at the beginning of the game just kind of a blank slate, and the way those games tend to work is as you go through the game, you're kind of introduced to there's forces of chaos and there's forces of law, so the two opposing factions, and neither faction is kind of presented to you as being inherently bad or inherently good. It's like they both do things that, can be considered to be good and can be considered to be evil. It's all kind of a matter of perspective. And what I really like about that series is the fact that you can make your own choices as you go through the game. And because neither side is kind of portrayed in a certain light as being good or evil, it's really up to the player and your own kind of philosophy and your own beliefs, whichever path you want to take. Or you can choose to decide to not side with any of them, not side with either side, and just go down they call it like the true neutral path, which I usually like doing because it's kind of, I mean, at a very gamey sense, it's the most content usually. But even then, I think it's interesting to just kind of see the forces of law and chaos and then just walk your own path beside both of them. So that's kind of a feature that I wish we saw more of, is like the idea of really giving the player choice in an RPG and letting them kind of make decisions that can be very difficult because a lot of the decisions in SMT games are quite weighty and they can be quite hard to make because the game doesn't really there usually isn't a good choice here. It's kind of like, here's this, issue, here's something that's going on. How do you want to solve it? Do you want to kill this person or do you want to kill that person? It's kind of like that. So these are very heavy decisions, and it's like, well, neither option is really great, but it's kind of like you pick whatever you think is right, and the game never really forces a certain opinion on you. And I really like that because by the end of it, whatever ending you get, you can feel quite confident that this was your story. This was kind of your character that you role played through this world. So that's something that I like about RPGs is the actual role playing element of it. I wish there were more games that didn't just have this like fixed story, um, and instead gave the player more choice in how that story unravels. And obviously, the choices in SMT they do affect other characters' perspective on you, their the way they perceive you. Some of them will dislike you, some of them will want to ally with you more readily because of your alignment. Because a lot of games, I know there are a lot of games these days that do like give you choices, but I find I don't know if you agree with this, Kira, but I find like a lot of them are very like binary, where it's like this is the good choice and this is the bad choice, and
Mm.
if you pick the good choice, then you get good points, and if you pick the bad choice, then you get bad points. And then at the end of the game, it's just tallying up how many good and how many bad you have, and then it gives you that. It's like there's not a whole lot of depth to that. I don't just want to play a bad character, and I don't necessarily just want to play, a lawful good character. I kind of like making my decisions based on the situations. I like having those kind of meaningful decisions in games. So that's a feature that I do wish we saw more of in games instead of because I know a lot of games, especially in JRPGs, they do tend to have a kind of static story where you're following a character through their journey, and it's kind of set in stone how it's gonna play out. So yeah, I don't know. That's just something that I would consider. What about you? What do you think?
For me, one of because I've played a lot of JRPGs, a lot of SquareSoft, a lot of Namco. I'm not as experienced on Atlas as you are, but I have played a lot of JRPGs, and one of the things that happens quite frequently for me is you'll be playing, you have your party, you have gone through, I don't know, at least half the game by now with these characters, and you get to this spot and it's like, "Oh, we're going to take these characters away from you, the ones that you've been using all the time,
Yeah,
and you now have to use these other characters that you kind of have left benched. By the way, they haven't leveled up. They're still level, 15 like when you got them, and your main characters are in their 50s."
yeah,
And I kind of wish that a feature that because I've seen it in a lot of games, a lot of JRPGs, but I kind of wish that a feature that was available in all of them was one that even your benched party will get some experience, if not, the full amount, so that you have your favorite party, right? You have your favorite characters that you like using, and it does kind of there's a certain ones that you just kind of, go, man, that one's annoying and I don't want to use them, or I just like these other ones just so much better. I don't like it's not that I don't like the certain characters, it's more that I have these other ones that I just like so much better. So then I have all these that are so much lower, and it feels almost like I've penalized these characters by not using them now, because this level 15 has to go fight this boss and he's not prepared. And it's like crud. So one of the features that I would like to see is leveling of all the characters, not just your main party. I feel like that would be really nice. Another thing that I think would be neat to see in more, if not all, RPGs is that bond relationship system that you can build with your characters, and it makes it so that when you're using them or using, like, I know Persona and maybe Shin Megami, they do the relationship bonds where if you build these bonds with these characters, the personas that you use are now stronger and will level faster, and that's kind of cool. I kind of wish that there was something like that in more games, because I'm not as experienced with the Atlas games, and I think it would just be kind of neat that as you play the game, you start building a bond, and as you level that bond, your characters get stronger. It's like, oh, well, these two are in the party together, therefore, they get some kind of bonus for that. I think that's an incredibly cool system in those, and I wish that was in more, because I really haven't experienced that too much, except maybe in the Fire Emblem series.
yeah,
They do that in some of the more modern Fire Emblem. If they fight next to each other a lot, they'll start a support system, and then they get stronger if they're placed next to each other. And I think that'd be kind of neat in some of them is you kind of get rewarded for using certain characters together more. It's like, oh, well, they're friends, so they would fight better next to each other. So I think that'd be kind of neat.
Yeah, so
Mine aren't
like
quite
pairing.
as, you know,
Sorry, carry
yeah,
on.
pairing.
Yeah,
I
and
was
like
just saying
powering
mine
up the
aren't quite as in
characters.
depth, but it's one of those that it's like this would be really cool if that was in more, just because I have seen so many different JRPGs, and it's like that'd be really cool if this was something that was featured more often across the board, because it's just a fun feature. Like, you don't have to feel like you're penalized by not building the bonds. Like, you should be able to get through without them. Like, if you're just
Yeah.
constantly switching out party members or something. But if you do use a party all the time, it'd be kind of neat to have like something there to go, oh, well, they have an S rank bond. So now, they deal 10 extra damage per whatever. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so like basically powering up the characters that you like, making them better
Mhm.
for spending money. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I like that feature about Persona as well, and especially since like when you level them up, as you were saying, you tend to get like passive abilities for them. Like they can now wake
Mhm.
up a party member who's been knocked down, or they can cure serious ailments that affects someone on your team. Like it's pretty
Yeah,
good.
they can take a mortal blow for you now. That
Yeah,
part I thought was really neat because how many times have you almost been one shot by something in a boss fight, and they're like, "No, I don't think so."
unless
That's
they're the
kind of cool.
healer, in which case no.
Yeah,
You need to be there to revive me, not die in my
yeah,
place, because then I
yeah.
can't revive you. But yeah, I think also I think it's really interesting that you mentioned. I don't totally agree about like the bench experience. Just giving
Mm,
inactive characters passive experience. One thing that is really annoying. When you said like the games tell you that you need to kind of split your party, and now you're
mhm.
having to use these people that you haven't used. The the other really annoying thing is when some games make you split the party, but the characters that you were using that doesn't give you their gear back, so now they take all their high level stuff that they have, and they're gone. And now you having to use these characters that you have not leveled at all, or
And
like
they have a
stop leveling,
stick to
and they
fight
have a
with.
stick or they have like a cloth or a sack as their helmet,
Yeah.
and it's just like this is just tragic. Now you have to
Oh
go
no.
shopping for like a full set of gear for them again. Oh my god,
Yeah.
if that's even
It's like not
possible.
only do I have to level you, now I have to gear
Now
you
I
and
have to
stuff.
gear
Come
you.
on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
I've
man.
been in that situation, and I think it was literally a stick. I can't remember what game that was, but yeah, he goes out there, he's level 10 out there poking stuff with a stick, and like my level 80s took off with their like ultimate weapons. It's like, oh
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, and usually when
oh
games do
no.
that, it's at a part where you may necessarily not be able to go back to a town. Like it's at like a very
Yeah,
pivotal part in the story where you just have to go after the boss or whoever it is that you're going after.
yeah. Basically just offer yourself up. It's like, I'm sorry, I'm level 10. She's left me sitting on the bench this whole time. I don't know what you want me to do. So yeah.
Yeah.
I I've done that a few times. I've learned from that, and I do try and rotate my characters out. Like I said, I'm playing Chrono Trigger right now,
Mm.
and there are times I'm actively trying to pull in the other members that I haven't used in a while to try and get them leveled so that they'll be strong enough and they'll learn their techniques, their new abilities and stuff. And because I just have this feeling that I'm gonna have to use you, and you're gonna not have anything. So I have tried to learn from my mistakes on that one. But yeah, in current ones, I think it'd be really neat to kind of have that feature in most of them. So you can use whoever you want. You can use your favorite characters. If you have to use this other one, even if it's just a fraction of the experience, I feel like that would at least help, because then instead of being level 10, they'll be level 40, and I only need to, grind a little bit to get them up. But, I think that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah. Especially with how games these days, like JRPGs, they tend to have like very large casts of characters,
Mhm.
and it's I mean like to be honest, even Final Fantasy VI had a pretty big cast.
Mhm.
Like it's very likely that you're gonna recruit these characters onto your team, And I mean, if you can only have like 4 or 5 people in the active party, but you have like 15 characters, a lot of them are going to be inactive, and they would be not. And you don't know when the game is going to
Yeah.
potentially make you split everybody up and stuff. So yeah, it would be nice to just have them because otherwise that's a lot of grinding. Constantly kind of switching party members in and out. If you have a lot of them, it's kind of
Yep.
doing the same bit over and over again. But yeah,
Yeah. The worst experience I had with that was actually probably in Final Fantasy VIII.
right.
Because I have my favorite characters in that one, and I always use them, and they always have like their GF compatibilities maxed and everything. And then there's a spot in there where it's gonna take those away from me, and I have to play as these others, and I'm like, oh no!
Yeah.
And they have like no compatibilities with their GFs. They're low. So yeah,
Oh
it's
no. The compatibility thing is a
I,
real issue in that game.
yeah, I struggled on that because I'm like, but because everyone has their favorite characters in a game, right? And everyone has those characters that they just kind of don't
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
and that's fine to have your, like who you do, dislike who you don't. But in that situation, it's one of those where you're now being forced to use that character that you
Mm.
don't like. And it's like, but I don't like this character. I haven't leveled them. So
Yeah. I haven't left them for
now
a
I
reason,
dislike
god
them
damn it.
even more. Yeah, I left them over there. And then now it's like, now you're making me use them and I dislike them even more because they're weak and they're not able to do anything. And it's like, ooh. So yeah, there's a few JRPGs that like to do that, and I always get bit by it every time because I can't help it. I want to use the ones that I really like.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a really good one. I agree with both those two things. Do you have anything else?
Not that I can think of. Those are the main ones that I like. The other opinions would be more controversial. Like the wanting, like, you know how in some JRPGs it'll show you the turn order,
Yeah.
like
Like on the
upcoming
side or
turns.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to have that in a lot of them because I think that can be incredibly useful, to know when the boss is going to punch me. So I know if I need to, do something this turn to prep for it.
Yeah.
But in some games, that would be, really controversial. You don't do that. It's supposed to be a surprise when he blindsides you. But
When he attacks 3 times back to
yeah,
back.
it's like, ouch! I didn't know that was coming, or maybe I would have, done defend on one of those
Yeah.
turns. At least on my healer, defend. But I like those, where it shows you the turn order, and especially when it'll show you if you do this move that slows the enemy, they're now going to move down to this slot, and it affects your
Yeah.
turn order in this way. And I think those are really neat. So, but yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, it helps you think more strategically and manage like buffs and that kind of stuff a little bit better if you know exactly when this character's next turn is going to be, and especially with bosses,
Mm.
because a lot of bosses,
Yeah,
especially when you get towards the end of JRPGs, they tend to pull some mad stuff, man. Like,
yeah. Just randomly one shot your entire party, and it's like,
yeah,
whoa. Well, I didn't know that was gonna happen, and I haven't hit a save point in the last 20 minutes, so I'll
yeah,
be back eventually.
yeah. Oh god.
Uh,
There's one more that I did think of, by the way. So we've been talking about like MMOs. It's
mm,
not really an MMO thing, but one thing that I would really like more of in RPGs is a more kind of cohesive class system where you can like pick a character's class, and as they level up they'll get class specific abilities, and there's like a skill tree. I really like that kind of thing in RPGs. I
yeah.
like having kind of meaningful decisions in terms of what class you're going to pick. The reason I bring up MMOs is because they tend to have that. Like your class that you pick is your first big decision that you're going to make in the game usually. Um, and there's a lot of thought that goes into what you pick. It's usually what you think is cool. What you kind of identify with, maybe something like that. Or
Play style.
yeah, play style. It could just be something that you usually play. Like, hey, when I play D&D, I always play, an elf archer or something like that. And you'd like to
Mm.
just play the archer class in this game.
That's me.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I wish more games kind of had a class system, but like this is my controversial opinion. A class system where you can like viably just play that class if you want to just play that class like to the end of the game, and not one where
Mm.
you have to constantly switch. Because I'm not a huge fan of that. Because usually what that means is um, you're gonna have to end. You're gonna basically end, kind of like your point of the not having passive experience and stuff. You usually will end up having to play
Mm.
a class that you don't like just because you want to unlock an ability that that class has, so you can use it on your main class. And I don't usually like doing that kind of thing. I mean, I'll do it, but I prefer to just have one where it's like as you go through the game, not only is there like new dungeons and new towns and new characters to meet that you're looking forward to, new plot points, but you're also looking forward to leveling up to a certain point to get like this super awesome ability that you have. One of the games that actually did that that I played quite recently. It wasn't really a class system necessarily, but Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne. What it did was it had this Magatama system where you could ingest a certain like I mean, I guess you could call it like a demon bug. But these things, there were loads of them in the game, and each of them, what it would do is every time they have like a certain affinity. So, for example, one of them may impart physical skills. One of them will be like ice magic. One of them will be like fire magic, or some will be support. And that effectively, you can look at that as like a class. And when you select one, you'll learn those abilities as you level up. And I just thought that was really cool because then you can kind of build your character exactly how you want them. You can have some physical skills, you can have some buffs as well, and maybe a support skill just here and there, just for like the end game kind of thing. So games that
Mm.
do that, games that have some kind of class system or like some kind of choice going into like what kind of attacks you get and being able to customize that is something that I wish more games did.
That would be really cool. Yeah. I always like the customizable jobs in a way, like the jobs classes,
Yeah,
abilities
absolutely.
like that. Yeah.
Because then you get attached to like your favorite.
Yeah.
You usually end up having a favorite of like, hey, this is my favorite job or class. But yeah, cool. So that pretty much brings us to the end of the show. Unless you have anything to add, Kira.
No, not for me. That was it for me today.
Perfect. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. We had a fun time making it. It's a
Yay.
nice little thing to just kind of throw together. Um, we will be back at some point as well for episode 2, so you can look forward to that. And it's going to be more, JRPG and RPG goodness and more gaming memories from when we were younger and all of that kind of stuff. And hopefully we'll have more games to talk about as well. We do have a lot of questions, by the way, that we're gonna go through as some of our main topics for the show. So, if anybody has anything else that they think they would like to hear us discuss or talk about, or if you have any questions in general, feel free to post them as well. I think that will make for some pretty good content for our show in the future. But that's been it from us. I am again Jags, one of your hosts, joined by Kira.
Hi,
And
thank you guys so much for coming. Take care.
yeah, thanks for coming. We're going to be signing off. Hope you guys have a great weekend, morning, evening, night, whatever the case may be. Thanks again for watching, everyone.